Be confident, be bold, be authentic, but don't forget to take action. This is Ordinary to Badass, where our stories empower women to step into the spotlight of their own lives and pursue what they're truly passionate about. It's time to step into the arena and become more than just extraordinary. It's time to become a badass with your host, Marie Sonneman.
Welcome to Ordinary to Badass, episode number 311. In this episode, you are going to hear from Traci Hill. And Tracy is a coach who specializes in helping people heal physically by raising their vibrations and releasing negative emotions and attachments using subtle energy. So we talk about different things in this episode. Tracy is a firefighter, and then she switched to becoming a coach. So of course we talk about that transition, how it worked out, how emotions can cause diseases. So the importance of that, how we're feeling, and also the importance of consumption. Consume less and to be present more. And then how to heal from the past, the things that you can do to start to heal from your past. We all have a past, even if it isn't crazy traumatic. We often do get little traumas that are stored in our body or ways of doing things that we keep doing. So this conversation's so interesting. I know for me, like having been in law enforcement, it's super interesting to hear the other side, like her being a firefighter and her experience. So definitely check out this episode. And if you love it, share it with a friend. Share it with 3 friends. Heck, the more that you can get it out to other badasses, then that's other people who can join our community that are already badass. So share it with some friends and let's get to it. Welcome to Ordinary to Badass. Whether you're ordinary or badass, I'm so glad you're here. Today's guest is Traci Hill. Tracy, thanks so much for being here. Excited to have you on the show.
Thank you, Marie, so much for having me.
So before we go any further, I've got to ask you, do you consider yourself ordinary or badass?
Well, I'm badass in the fact that I have taken my own sovereignty back and my own personal power, but I'm just like you, just like your audience. I'm an ordinary gal who's decided to make changes in her life.
How did you take your own personal power back?
Well, the one day I was sitting in jail because my ex threw me in jail. We're starting off this episode with a bang, by the way. Sitting in jail, falsely accused of stuff. And it was like right before going to see the judge. And I remember just sitting there thinking, you know what? I can let this take me down and become a victim. And woe is me the rest of my life, or I can rise above this, figure this out, and now take charge of my own life because I was married to a narcissist, and figure out what it is that I want to, what I want to embody the rest of my life. And a lot was in that moment of making that final decision to take charge. And it was just, you get into a situation in which it's like a do or die kind of situation. And, you can sink or swim, and I chose to swim.
So something I often ask people or that are guests on the show is it one thing that made you feel like a badass, or was it kind of a series of events? So for you, was it that one incident, like being put in jail, or was it a series of things after that? What do you think?
Definitely a series. I was in the Army a long time ago now, 30 years ago. And, if any of your listeners have gone through boot camp, it's not easy. You're away from your comfort zone. You're being constantly yelled at, told what to do. You're under all this pressure and you have to perform. And then going through and getting my master's degree on my own. No one else in my family had any kind of degree at all. So that was, pretty triumphant. And then my multiple sclerosis diagnosis, overcoming that, I actually healed myself from that. That to me is one of my biggest accomplishments because I didn't have anyone to help guide me and figure out how to heal myself. It took me years, but I did it. I haven't taken medications in 18 years. I've been symptom free for 18 years. And, I consider myself a badass in that respect, because so many people are looking to do that and they don't even know what steps to take. But I just dove in and did it.
So good. I can't wait to dive in more and hear more about that. But first, will you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm a mom of two. I live in Chicago. I'm not only a Chicago firefighter in my 23rd year, but I'm also a coach or healer or guide, whatever you want to call it. And I help people kind of like you go from ordinary to badass, but I call it finding their own true path, becoming really who they authentically are, finding their purpose and passion, and healing themselves on a mental, spiritual, emotional, physical level. So I call myself a subtle energy alchemist because I like to help people still be able to function in daily life, but change your energy, shift and grow your frequency so that you could become a better version of yourself. So getting married in July, very excited.
Congrats.
And married again. And then, so hopefully I'll be retiring in the next year so that it'll be my husband and I can allow me to grow my subtle energy alchemy business, Conscious Evolution, and just go on this mission of helping people, as many people as possible, to really find peace and love from within.
So you said that you help people find their own true path. Can you talk about that and expand on that a little bit more? What does that look like and why do people want to do that?
Sure thing. Well, I like to talk about how people use a lot of different modalities to silence the voices in their head so that they don't have to feel, because feeling emotions like fear, anger is really uncomfortable for people. And those are normal. It's part of the normal human experience. But when we don't know what to do with them, we end up covering them up with food, alcohol, exercise, shopping, gossip, TV, you name it. And it becomes a lot of what I call consumption. So all of your five senses are constantly being bombarded with consuming. I'm sure you know of someone who constantly has the TV on in the background, or someone who likes to talk a lot, or someone who's constantly has to snack on foods, or, these things that we do to not have to listen to the own voices in our head. And every time we do that, and the more we do it, the more we're suppressing the emotions that are inside of our heart. And when those constantly stay in our body, they lead to stress and trauma. Trauma leads to more trauma. And from that, they get lodged in different organs and create disease. But then also we're suppressing who we really are. I was taught to, not show your emotions, don't be weak. No one likes a weakling. I was very masculine in my energy for a very, very long time. And when you hide your feelings, you don't get to process them, and you put up these walls around you. So you're really not down to who you really are at the heart level, at the core of who you really are, which means that you are living someone else's life, typically your parents' life. So, for example, I was told, you graduate high school, you go to college, you get married, have kids, have a house, and then you work until you die. But I have learned that that is not healthy and is not the way to go about creating a life of sharing your gift with the world, and stops you from really being who you really are. There's so many people working jobs that they just hate their jobs. And it's like, then, they get to the weekend for the typical 9 to 5, and they just want to forget about it completely. So they drink copious amounts of alcohol, or they, do things that really don't inspire them. It just numbs them. And then again, gets you further and further from who you are. Did that answer your question? It was a long answer.
So what do you think the first step is to start or to get on the right path?
Being honest with yourself. The hardest part is accepting, or the acknowledgement of, yeah, I'm really not living the life I want. It's difficult and very challenging for a lot of women because they're married with kids and they're unhappy, but they'll never admit it because they love their kids and they probably love their spouse. They're not necessarily super unhappy, but they're not, excited to wake up every day because it feels like a grind. And being honest with the part of you that says, this is not doing it for me, is a really hard step. But if you can do that, it's the first honest step to yourself. Doesn't mean you have to admit it to anyone else at this time, but just giving yourself the space to say, this isn't working for me. I don't need to abandon it completely, but I need to understand what it is that I really need. And then from there, it's about really listening to what you're saying in your own head, which is a really hard part. This is probably the hardest part because, again, we're constantly consuming things. If you are in the morning and you're rushing the kids off to school and there's a TV on and you're checking your social media and lunches are trying to get made and coffee's trying to get made, you're doing 20 things at once. You're consuming 20 things at once. There was a moment when I had my kids and they were down for a nap. They were very little at the time. And my husband at the time was at work. And I remember just being exhausted because I was working full-time, mom full-time, everything. And I sat on my couch. There was no TV on. There was nothing on. We didn't really have, phones weren't really a thing you played on. So I just sat on the couch and I just stared off in space. And I was like, wow, there's silence. And it was really peaceful. I'm like, this is kind of weird. And then I was kind of explored the silence. This is really nice. I kind of like this. And that was one of the other catalysts that helped me realize we are just over consuming so many things around us. So being able to sit and be honest with yourself and give yourself some space for that silence. And like I said, it's very difficult because now it's the silence is uncomfortable for majority of people because you start to hear the thoughts. And those thoughts, you start judging them, you resent them, you're angry, you're fearful. These thoughts are whoa, they were there this whole time, but you numbed them with other things. It's the most practical and most free step ever and can be life-changing. And the whole idea is getting comfortable with being uncomfortable in this whole process, because the more you get uncomfortable, the easier being uncomfortable gets.
So are you meditating to have more silence? What are you doing in the silence?
Well, funny you should ask that. So in the beginning, I just sat. I didn't do anything. I just sat there. And if thoughts came in, I just kind of okay, it was almost observer view, which is a really good tip. Just observing them. There's no judgment on the thoughts that come in. I then went into meditation. And again, this is years ago. It took me so long because I would put this task-oriented idea on meditation. It was like a check, I checked it off for the day. So I would try to sit for 5 minutes. And when I say try, I sat there thinking about all the things I was going to do after the meditation. And then I was judging it. And then I was getting upset because I'm like, ugh, but then I would finish the 5 minutes and I'd be like, check. It took me forever to realize you don't have to empty your mind. It's not about emptying your mind. It's just about sitting and observing. That's it. There's different forms of meditation, but if all you can do is sit in silence and whatever happens, happens, if thoughts come in, fine. If thoughts don't come in, fine. If you're thinking about your to-do list, just stop and observe it. Don't judge it. And it took me a long time to figure that out. But once I did, I was like, okay. So in my house, the TV barely goes on. There's a lot of silence in my house because it has this very loving, peaceful quality for me. I love going outside and just listening to the birds, especially in the summer. So if that's a form of meditation for you, perfect. Listening to ocean waves, perfect. It's about more so just being present with what you're hearing or seeing. So a lot of times, if you put earplugs in and put a mask, a darkening mask on, you can, and just lay down. It's a lot easier to notice what's happening. But the more senses that are involved in your experience, the more you have to observe and digest. So it's easiest to do it in darkness in the beginning, in darkness, in complete silence, or have some type of like binaural beats on that you're listening to, and just lay down and notice what's coming to you. The only way to really create change is by observing more and paying attention to what is present with you at the very moment.
So I think what you said is a good distinction, like just sitting there and observing your thoughts. So often people think like, if I meditate, I have to have my mind completely clear. I can't think of anything. And it's like, I don't know about you, but that's really not worked for me. It's like, I am not there yet. And, I meditate for an hour a day, but like, that's my time to get out my drama or like the thoughts that are in my head that are going. So it's not there the rest of the day. And it kind of gives me some ease. Has that been your experience?
Absolutely. I put so much judgment on what was coming in because, like you, I thought we have to be blank. And it's not what it's about. Not what it's about at all. And now, like, there's so many apps to help you meditate and so many different ways. I didn't have that back then. None of that existed. You had to go to some facility if you wanted like a formal meditation. Otherwise, you just had to like figure it out. I thought you had to sit in a lotus position. I didn't understand all the things, and so, there's even the guided meditations now are great. You don't have to worry about, trying to guide yourself through something. You can do anywhere from 1 minute to 2 hours of meditation, but anything is better than nothing. Just paying attention to your breathing is awesome. Feeling the actual breath going in and out of your nose is a form of meditation. So yeah, it's different for everyone, but releasing the judgment of how it goes is the best thing you could do.
So earlier you talked about this idea of that you help people change their energy. Why would somebody want to change their energy? And how do you know if your energy is off?
Okay, so everything that you experience in your reality is based on your frequency. So like attracts like, and what you put out comes back at you. If you are continually experiencing certain things, I always tell my clients, like, look for your patterns. What are your patterns? And I'll give you a personal example. I'm very much an open book, so I don't mind. I didn't realize I had like an impatience issue, which is a form of anger, and like control. I had like personal control issues. I was always getting, the long lines in the grocery store, or, stuck behind that slow person in traffic, or stuck behind someone walking slowly and I can't get around. It's like, it's like, I have so many things I need to get done. Hurry up. Okay. So if that's you, so I'm sure a lot of your listeners can understand that. I was one day standing in the grocery store and of course got in a long line, and I realized like, oh my God, it's a patience thing. I see you, universe. Okay. And so what we try to avoid is typically what we experience. And therefore what you put out is what comes back to you. And so that's a specific frequency. Everything has a frequency. Your thoughts, the food you eat, your clothing, the earth, everything has a frequency. And the higher your frequency goes, the more manifesting you can create, the more of what you want comes into your life. And so if you're experiencing the things that you don't like, it's because you're putting it out there. It's because you're putting attention on it and focus on the things you don't want. Your subconscious does not know the difference between don't and do. So if you say like, I don't want another bad relationship, it just hears another bad relationship. It doesn't hear don't. So every time you move your frequency up the scale of consciousness, which I can talk about, you are not only changing your DNA, but you're also attracting new experiences, more synchronicities, more manifesting of what you do desire. So the scale of consciousness has been created by Dr. David Hawkins, and he has a book, The Map of Consciousness, I believe it's called. And the scale goes from 0 to 1,000, and everything falls on that scale. Everything falls on that scale. Political viewpoints, a bracelet that you're wearing, a plant, your thoughts again, your relationships, everything falls on that scale. And at the bottom is like shame and guilt. And then we get up to fear, which is under 200 on the scale. And I kind of base everything off of that, because fear-based, you lose your power. And above that, you get back your personal power. So above that is anger, and then this willingness, and love is at 500. The closer you can get to love, which, believe it or not, only like 0.1% of the population is at that level. It's not a lot. The closer you can feel yourself to source or God or whatever you want to call it. So changing your frequency actually changes your entire life. You are more aligned with who you are. You're more aligned with your God-given, or what do you want to call it, your birth talent, your gift that you were given at birth, because we're all born with the ability to love and be loved, but we've stepped away from that. And basically all of life, you're either feeding fear or you're feeding love. And that's kind of what it all comes down to. If you are in any kind of fear-based living, you can't be in love. It's impossible. They're complete opposite of each other. And so when you can raise your frequency through many different ways, you are feeding not only yourself, but you're also shifting humanity as a whole.
So this idea of getting away from like fear-based decisions or just living a life full of fear, how do we start to move away from feeling fear from things?
So I will say fear is a huge umbrella term, and there's, I had fear of success and fear of failure. And when I found this out, I was like, how is that even possible? But a lot of people have it. You're afraid to change. So the idea of being successful is fearful, because that means change. And the idea of failure means that you look weak. And so you can have both. There's all different types of fear. And I don't mean phobias so much. The phobias are very rare. It's these fears in life, like fear of getting hit by a car when you cross the street, fear of letting your kids go outside, fear of the environment, fear of the government, fear of all these things. That's a fear of not having control over your own thoughts and body. So one, again, is getting real with yourself and being honest. I mean, trust me, when I had so many like ridiculous sounding fears, when you say them out loud, you kind of like, it's almost embarrassing to yourself. But it's the first step in having to heal this, because if you don't admit what you're feeling or experiencing, it will never change. So it's stepping into saying, I'm going to observe what my mind is thinking about these situations. And for example, like I like to use this one a lot. So as a female, typically our bosses are male, not always, and you might be your own boss. That's awesome. But it's very common for a male to be your boss. And so you want to do a good job and you want to be heard and seen. As a female, that's pretty common. And you go into your work and maybe you have a new good idea that you want to present to your boss, or like a different way of doing something. And you tell your boss this new idea, And he's like, just totally dismisses you. Now you go into this fear of not being heard, fear of like abandonment, fear of not being good enough, this lack of self-worth, and this whole thing spirals. Maybe he just didn't hear you because he's got something personal going on that he just couldn't attend to. Maybe your boss is a jerk. I don't know. But I'm just saying we create these scenarios in our head based on past experiences that spiral way out of control. And we make up this whole story, but then we like shove it down because we don't want to feel that way. And so we cover it up with other things like eating and drinking and whatever. So being honest with yourself about how you're actually feeling is really, really important to create the first step to change.
So why is it that we resist change so much?
Because it's change, of course, because it's uncomfortable. And no one wants to feel uncomfortable. Our ego, and I'm sure your listeners know this, it's there to protect us. It does serve a purpose. But this day and age, we're not running from the proverbial tiger. We're running from social media comments. We're running, from bills. We're running from traffic and, the stressors of daily life. But our ego doesn't really know the difference. It's just trying to protect you. And so we have puffed up these situations in which they feel like a do or die situation. And so, giving yourself the space to say, I don't need to run from this is super helpful. Did I answer your question? I don't think I
did. You're fine. It's good. Yeah, you did, because that's why people resist change. So
yeah, because it's uncomfortable. Yeah.
So I would like to pivot a little bit and talk about you being a firefighter, and you've done that for 23 years. How did that come about? What got you interested in being a firefighter, and was it intimidating or scary at all before you got into it?
No. So I used, we'll call it active adventure. I've gone skydiving 6 times, 1 solo jump. I was in the military. Like I did all of these things, adrenaline junkie, I guess you can call it, to cover up like really what I needed. I was very much in my masculine energy. We all have both. We all should have a balance of both. But I was way over masculine energy. I would never show myself crying. In fact, I wouldn't even cry by myself because there was a sign of weakness. I'm air quoting weakness, which it is not. And so, it was always just like shove down the feelings, just go for it, be aggressive. You've got this. And so I got my master's degree in kinesiology. So I worked with athletes, again, masculine field, because I was, there weren't many females doing what I was doing. And I got to work with athletes and make them better athletes. And then this job came along for the fire department. And I was like, I can do that. I'm going to prove it. That wasn't the words I used because I had covered that up. But in hindsight, it was like, I'm going to prove myself that women can do this too. And so I was actually the only female in my class. And I did have to work extra hard. But I was admired because I did just as much as the guys did, which puffed up my ego and like made me feel worthy. Like, oh, look at that. I did do it, Now the fire department's very machismo, of course, right? There has to be, it's like a protective mechanism. But my guys know now that I'm on this other side of everything, this other aspect. I have my definite feminine qualities. I'm like the mom of the firehouse, And so, but it came along, it served its purpose. It helped me get through periods of time I had to get through, because when I got on, there weren't that many females on. But it can be detrimental if you're not careful with how you present yourself on a constant daily basis. I was constantly living in this masculine role, and that's exhausting because the masculine side is very much about doing and productivity, whereas the feminine is about being and creation. And if we don't have a balance, you get your adrenals and thyroid will get wiped out. You'll run into disease, which is what happened to me.
And was that when you had multiple sclerosis? Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
And well, we'll get into that in a minute. So getting into the fire department, and then now you've kind of changed, focus more on the feminine, or maybe balancing it out between the masculine and feminine. How has that changed your relationships with people in the fire department?
It has. It was actually very scary I went through this like 2-year period where I was like one person outside the job and a totally different person inside the job. And I realized like a year into doing that, it was very difficult for me. I had a hard time switching gears because I was practicing my feminine so much and I didn't know how to present that inside the firehouse. And I just had to make this decision, like, this is for you. You get one chance on this in this meat suit and this human experience. So we're just going to do it. It was because I was just a fitness nutrition coach before, because again, that's very much like a doing thing. It's very masculine energy. So when I decided to just, you know what, screw it. we're just going to be who we are. There was a lot of like praying and meditating over it and just really being present with myself. And now it's like, they all know that like I meditate, like I do all these weird things. They will ask questions and they don't judge me. And if they do, they know I'm like, okay, that's cool, whatever, but they have now accepted it. But it was a very uncomfortable switch because it was like, all of a sudden I'm going to come in as this different person, but it didn't really have to be that way. I exaggerated it in my head when really it was just me being like present with myself about who I wanted to be. And what happens then is you attract those who resonate with that frequency, like I talked about earlier. And those who don't like your energy, then they won't really come near you. And it's kind of nice because now I'm surrounded with people who get me, and I'm very, very open. I don't hide anything. It's just like, take me or leave me, cool either way, but I have like just a beautiful support system and people that I'm surrounded by that get me, and then they get curious and I get to really I don't say enlighten them, but share my experiences. And if they're more curious, then they can ask me again.
Did you lose any friendships during that time?
Not so much in that 2-year period, definitely before when I first started my journey, I'm pretty sure all my friends, like it's not even so much that you really lose them. They just fall away naturally because they just can't resonate on your level anymore. And that's okay. They're just not ready for who I am. And they may, change themselves so that I won't say catch up, but like change their frequency to match mine more. Not everyone's meant for you. You can't, as females, we tend to want to like people please everybody. And that's just unhealthy for you and pleases nobody, especially you.
Were you meditating before you got the diagnosis of multiple sclerosis?
Definitely not. Working out, yes, that was my form of meditation, but definitely not even close to wanting to meditate because I thought it was like weakness and a waste of time.
So what got you into it?
Just that time I sat on the couch and realized that peace was nice. My kids were like, I think maybe 3 and 1 at the time. So just having that, like, it's like I needed that. I had no time to be silent. And I think I didn't realize how much the silence meant to me. I'm a huge fan of hiking in the woods. So that should have like dawned on me, just having this like sense of nature has me. But it didn't dawn on me until really that moment of sitting on my couch.
So you said earlier that you cured yourself. Can you talk more about that?
Mm-hmm. I'll say healed myself. Slightly different terminology, but so was diagnosed. I had numbness on one side of my body. I had all kinds of symptoms, and went on medication to begin with. It was horrible. I took myself off, and when I decided to deep dive into really the cause of all diseases. And again, this is over a long stretch of time, but I did a year of very, very heavy research and realized that, the environment, and I was bit by a tick when I was 3 and it buried itself on my neck. I had mono at 13. So I had all these different factors, like candida, the foods we eat, the environment, the soil, the water's huge. I'm like, okay, so all of these things are causing problems, but why multiple sclerosis? Why did I get this and not other people? I don't understand. And it came down to stress, which I understood. Stress will kill you. If not first, it gives you a disease of some sort or an illness. But then I'm like, well, why does stress affect people differently? And I realized then it's the emotions that we carry that we create the stress. And stress is good to a point, right? We need stress when we work out, we stress our muscles. When we go through something, we need some stress to push us forward. But the constant stress is damaging. It's the emotions in our head, they're emotions that we're feeling because they create a physical response that are actually the most detrimental thing. So if we're feeling fear, again, not so much a phobia, but fear of being seen, fear of not being heard, fear of abandonment, it attacks our kidney and bladder and affects all the fluid in our body. If we're experiencing anger of any sort, resentment, jealousy, even rage, that will affect our liver and gallbladder. So now you're going to have, your body's going to be full of toxins. You're not going to be able to release as well. You're going to have constipation, diarrhea cycles. So once I understood that, like, oh my God, these emotions are really causing damage, it's when you hold on to them that you hold on to them too long. So the baggage that we carry, you will give yourself a disease. You will give yourself a beautiful disease that you didn't want in the first place. So it's really, really important to express your emotions and release them out of your body so that you don't hang on to them and damage your organs.
So how do you start to express your emotions more?
Well, I started with journaling. I'm a fan of journaling, but not for myself personally. I think journaling is awesome. I'm just not, my mind goes too fast for my hand. But journaling is awesome. I did start with that. I started with, I went to talk therapy for like 3 months. That did not work for me, but I had to go in and start remembering childhood things that were still showing up in my adult life. And honestly, there's still stuff that comes up and I'm like, wow, where did that come from? That's crazy. So it's like picking apart, again, looking at the cycles that you have and going back to see when they happened the first time and what emotions come up from that experience. And then again, now coming back forward and saying, okay, where is it still showing up? Because if you're still being triggered by something, if something is still putting you in a mode of not joy or love, then that's still a trigger for you. And to figure out what that emotion is, a lot of times we just have to go all the way backwards. The first memory we have of that emotion, remember it and kind of pick it apart and then see again how that kept showing up in your whole life. So like if you had, say you had a mom who was like a perfectionist and she's always demanding that you keep your hair really nice and dress a certain way, you're either going to be exactly like that or you're going to be exactly the opposite of that. There's almost never a middle ground. So if you go exactly like that, you're going to see where maybe you judge other people for looking sloppy because you expect people to look a certain way. It's all about appearances then. If you want completely the opposite of that, you're going to have a different experience, but it's still all around that feeling of not being perfect enough, not being good enough, and all the way back from when you were a child.
So was it through that practice, like starting to pay attention to your emotions? And was that what helped you heal multiple sclerosis?
That was a huge start. I did breath work. I did box breathing, 1 minute a day, huge change in my life. So the box breathing, and then I did change the water I drank. I haven't drank tap water in over 20 years because it's detrimental to your pineal gland, and your pineal gland is the start of all the hormone production. And if your hormones are off, your whole body's going to be off, and you're going to think like, oh, I'm not sleeping because I'm older, or, I'm gaining weight because I'm getting older, or I have aches and pains because I'm older. Probably not. It probably has a lot to do with your hormones or your ancestral cellular memory, which is a whole nother topic. It's a huge topic, but your ancestral emotions that you get handed down to you create so much chaos in your body that I like to talk about it for a while, but it's part of epigenetics.
Can you explain for the people who don't know what box breathing is?
Absolutely. So box breathing is you're just sitting upright. And I actually did this when I drove. So you could do this anywhere once you get comfortable with it. So you want to imagine your torso like a pitcher of water that's empty, and you're going to fill it up from the bottom up. So you're going to breathe in for 4 seconds. You can pick another length of time. It just has to be consistent. And I started with 4 seconds because it was easier for me. So you're breathing in for 4 seconds, but starting from the bottom, like you're right above your pubic bone, and filling up. Your stomach has to push out, and you raise that air all the way up until it gets to the top of your chest. Then you hold for 4 seconds, and then you release for 4 seconds, and then you hold for 4 seconds. And you do that about 6 times. I did that 6 times once a day for about a week, and I noticed a difference. And then I added more times throughout the day. And again, I would do it standing in line at the grocery store. I would do it right before going to bed. I would do it when I got up. And I noticed this huge shift. And I was like, whoa, I was just a lot more present. And it just felt really good. I felt like I was kind of back home in my body. And so I continued with that. And then, of course, I moved on a lot from there. But that was a perfect start for me.
So Tracy, let's end with a tip to encourage women who are in the arena fighting for the life they want.
I say, well, you get to the age of 40 and you're like, you know what, you only get one chance. And if you're going to if you want your kids to emulate who you are, or anyone to emulate a beautiful life, you have to be that beautiful life. You have to be living a life that on your deathbed, you can say, you know what, I really did the absolute best I could. I enjoyed it. I loved people. I received love. And if I could go back, I wouldn't change a thing, because you are perfect as you are. Breathe through every moment, because this too shall pass, and know that everything always works out as it should.
And how can we connect with you?
My website is consciousevolution.coach, and you can find me on Facebook as Conscious Evolution Coach, and same on TikTok. And on my website, you can sign up for my emails.
Thank you so much, Tracy. You've been a total badass, and I've enjoyed hearing your story.
Thank you, Marie.
And with that, we'll end our show. To all the badass women out there staying in the arena, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, own it and get after it.
Now that you've listened to this episode of Ordinary to Badass, we want to hear from you. Go to our website, ordinarytobadass.com/podcast, and submit your own experience on how you took your life from ordinary to badass, and get the chance to be on a future Spotlight episode of the show. That's ordinarytobadass.com/podcast. While you're waiting for the next episode of the show, wipe off the sweat, dust off the dirt, and get back in the arena.